Pat, one of the things I have always loved about aviation since I was a little kid, and the first time I went to an air show at Westover Air Force Base in Massachusetts, is there's so many cool airplanes. I mean, at any given airport, there's plenty of things to look at, but there's a lot of Pipers and Cessnas and things you've seen before. And then a Stinson comes in, you go, oh, that's interesting. But
Right.
one of the great things about going to an air show, wherever it is the remarkable collection of aircraft that gather that people fly in. And, it just lights my fire. Do you have the same experience or am I weird?
No, you're not weird. I love to look at to walk the flight line. Excuse me, to walk the flight line and see some tricked out stagger wing or a Howard or a Waco or P-51s and Spitfires and all those airplanes that show up at trade shows. And there's some really weird ones that show up
Oh
too.
yeah. Yeah.
Um, uh,
Last year's Sun and Fun, there was one there that surprised me and I was thrilled. The Junkers A50. It's a it's a
mhm.
modern characterization of an airplane that they built in the 1930s. And I have a roommate from flight school, Matti Vidla, who is Finnish, and he's been flying one for fun out in Finland. It's got this corrugated skin, and they put a Rotax 912
Right.
in it. It's got a glass panel,
Yeah.
so it's very modern, but it's got that retro look. This past year's Sun and Fun, they had another version of it with a round engine and analog panel, and man, it looks just right. I love that airplane. I wouldn't mind flying that a bit.
Yeah, I think that was sitting in the Waco booth, if I'm
It
not
was right
mistaken.
on the corner there, and they were great people. I was over poking around at it, and a guy came right over and started answering questions and everything. So if you've got one, I'd love to go flying in it.
Yeah, really. And are they building that
There,
now?
yeah, it is. It is for sale.
Okay.
You can pick them up, and two hole open cockpit. And the cool thing
Right.
about the round engine one, it didn't have a windshield for the front hole, and it's got a cap over it, so you can set it up as a single pilot aircraft for when you're transporting it, ferrying it from one place to another. But then you just pop that
Right.
cap off and put the windshield back on, and you've got a two-seater. It's just such a cool looking airplane. I love it.
Yeah, I saw it sitting on the ramp there and thought, "Wow, this is this a brand new version of a very old airplane?" And that's exactly
There's
what it
something about
is.
corrugated
Of course,
skin, whether it's a Ford Tri-Motor or the Junkers, it
yeah,
just catches my eye. It looks like a fence project got out of hand and somebody turned it into an airplane.
yeah. It's exactly what it looks like. Speaking of that, I don't remember seeing the tri-motor there this
I
year.
did not either, but they are from the 20s. It's probably needing some maintenance.
Well,
I, you know, this,
yeah,
here's a Sun and Fun related story. I knew Billy Henderson, the guy who really started Sun and Fun and built it up. And the tri-motor was there one year, and Billy and I were talking, and he said, that's the first airplane I ever flew in. When I was a little boy, I got my first airplane ride in a Ford tri-motor, and it just turned my head around. It was fantastic. And 50 years later, I got the chance to fly one. What a piece of crap. But it's got no wing washout or anything. I mean, it's a 1920s airplane. It's the best they could do at the time. But now
yeah,
you
yeah.
had when you flew into Kissimmee with your partners, you actually saw an airplane that I have a personal connection to, holding short, didn't you? You had a B-25
Yeah,
hanging out there.
yeah. We had. I think you said it was by my description. I think you said it was
Yep.
Panchito. Um, and yeah, they were holding that they were holding that for us to land. So it's kind of cool to be looking out the window and there we that's cool. And of course, we taxied to our FBO, and as we were getting out of the airplane, they must have cleared it for takeoff because those big old radials that just beating the air into submission as it rumbled down the runway. Unmistakable sound, and just to watch that thing lumber into the air is just
I have
amazing.
never flown a B-25. I used to work on Panchito and Killer B and Barbie 3, three different B-25s when I worked as a
Yeah.
restoration guy up in Kissimmee. And I've never
Yeah.
flown one, but I've done a run up, and it's the most amazing thing, Pat, because those propeller blades are right there next to the cockpit,
Yes, they are.
and just idle. I mean, you can feel the compression wave hitting your chest. I knew a couple guys who flew those in the South Pacific, and the fact that they could hear anything afterwards with those horrible little headsets they had, an enormous amount of noise, but so powerful, really impressive aircraft.
Yeah, I've actually had a ride in a B-25. There's a B-25 at the Lone Star Flight Museum here in Houston, and it's on their ride program. And so, for the appropriate amount of money, they will happily take you for a ride. That you and 10 of your closest friends, and a good friend of mine did that. Booked a ride and was kind enough to invite me to come along with 6 or 7 other guys. And boy, I'll tell you what, it was about a 20-minute ride. We never got more than probably 15 to 1,800 feet or so around the south part of Houston. But man, oh man, to get a ride in one of those things and imagine what that must have been like 80 years ago, 70
Yeah.
years ago during World War II. And eh,
Panchito, Larry Kelly, who owns Panchito, that it's up in Delaware full time, I believe. But they offer second in command training for that. And I've thought about it. I mean, I don't need it for anything, but I have some experience with B-25s. I think they're amazing airplanes. And just the idea of
yeah.
going and actually doing enough training to do the second in command ride on that. Wow, what an experience that would be.
Oh, I couldn't agree with you more. It is absolutely impractical, but it's like, yeah,
It's a
so
life experience. Yeah, it's an awesome thing.
it's a life experience to be second in command on a World War II era bomber. What an amazing thing!
The prettiest airplane I think I've ever seen, and I'm on record with this. I think it's the Lockheed Constellation, and there are a variety of variations
Beautiful.
of it. But there was one at Sun and Fun this past year, and it was flying because there's one at Fantasy Flight not far from me, which actually was the West German Air Force One. It was Konrad Adenauer's transport. So inside,
Really?
all the signage is in English and German. And I've got a picture someplace of me sitting in the cockpit of that airplane, but it's flown once in the last 30 years. This one
Yeah.
was
Yeah.
absolutely pristine, beautiful. Rick Farron, who I know through Facebook, I've only met Rick one time. He's a retired UPS guy who now flies corporate or charter. I mean, just super cool dude. Just got his Master Pilot Award at Sun and Fun this past year. But he had a
Wow.
beautiful video of the Connie taxiing by, and that is just the sleekest, most luxurious airplane that was unfortunately rendered obsolete by the Boeing 707 that came out just a few months later. But what a
Yeah.
gorgeous airplane. It's like the pinnacle of piston power.
Oh, I agree with you. I watched it a couple of times do some flybys when we were there at Sun and Fun last week, and it's so graceful and even majestic, I guess, for lack of a better term, as it did at flyby. And you can just imagine, again, uh, flying overseas on a transcontinental or a transoceanic flight from New York to London or something like that in that fire breathing 4 engine piston driven
I
airplane.
have a friend, Kay Criley, who was a TWA flight attendant on Connie's early in her career. She's obviously
Oh,
retired now,
wow.
but she speaks of, and by the way, she was not a flight attendant. She will correct me. She was a stewardess. She considers that a
Yeah.
completely different job than flight attendant. They read the Wall
Yeah.
Street Journal so they could talk to people in first class about business. They were multilingual. I mean, she just has this whole thing, but they had these enormous flights. I mean, first of all, they had layovers that were 3 and 4 days long. It was a whole different
Right.
job. But TWA had a direct flight from London to San Francisco that was 25 hours, Pat. I can't even imagine.
That is a long
It
flight.
really is. And of course, the flip side of the prettiest airplane in the world is maybe the ugliest airplane in the world. We differ on our feeling about the Cybertruck. I love it. I was
You're
trying
not a fan.
very hard to
Not a
buy an
fan.
air cam, which admittedly is not sleek or sexy, but really cool. And I got to admit, I mean, I spent a good part of Sun and Fun visiting with the folks at the FAA, figuring how I could resolve some of the problems with this. And Pat, you've been on this road too. You put a lot of effort in. You check all the boxes. You make your decision. You line up the financing and everything, and then something goes wrong, and I'm not buying an air cam now, and my heart is broken.
Yeah. 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 I get that. Those things happen. You just have to kind of keep in mind that it's just a piece of machinery. It can't love you back. So move along. There'll be another one somewhere that won't have the issues that you had
You
with
know,
this one.
that's the way to look at it. When I sold my Cub, I was pretty sad about it. I mean, I had to do it at the time, frankly, because I was getting an air cam and I didn't have hangar space for 2 airplanes. And I was bemoaning it
Yeah.
one day, and a good friend of mine said, "There's another one. There's thousands of them. You can go get one if you want." And it really did
Yeah.
make me feel better because when that deal falls through, that's not the only one. There's plenty of options
No.
out there, and I'll find something one of these days, probably, because I want to be cool like you and own an airplane again.
Well, there's always a
But
cub.
by the way, when you are at the air shows, are you currently shopping for an airplane or are you happy with the stable you have?
No, I'm fine with that. I mean, I'm at a point now where the airplane, the Comanche, I'll fly that as long as the insurance company lets me. The 182 should take me hopefully into my 80s if I'm lucky enough to make it that far. So no, I'm not in the market for an airplane as much as it might be tempting. There's a decathlon on the field here in Houston. There's a partnership for sale and the decathlon, and I love to fly in tailwheel airplanes, but there's only so many hours in a day.
Yeah, and yours is pretty well packed. Now, is the
Yeah.
Comanche your favorite airplane, would you say?
Yes.
Well,
Hands down.
mine is the Connie, but I'm never going to own one of those. So I think probably the Cessna 182 is my favorite practical airplane. Folks, leave a comment down
Yeah.
below. What's your favorite airplane? What do you own, or what do you wish you could own, even if it's a Lockheed Constellation? I'm curious. Pat, would you like to know?
I would love to. Leave a comment.
Excellent. And click the like button while you're doing it. And of course, subscribe to the channel because subscribership is growing. It makes Pat and I very happy. And you never know what will happen if you send in a suggestion that we do a story on this or that or the other thing, because sometimes we do that. So until next time, I'm Jamie Beckett. That guy's Pat Brown. And we will see you next time.